Hi everyone, so I am joined today by Owens Thomsen, the Chief Economist of IATA, who has experience with private banking and the investment firm. Thank you so much, Marie, for joining me today.
It's a pleasure.
So my first question to you is, would you mind telling the audience some of your responsibilities and what your role means for IATA?
Yeah, so we now also actually have merged our economics team with our sustainability team, and our main role is, of course, to provide whatever research and understanding that we can for the industry as a whole across economics and sustainability. This is really important because obviously the two are intimately connected, but we also need to interact with everybody in the organization and everybody outside the organization, because it's a truly systemic challenge, challenge of getting to net zero by 2050.
Absolutely. And on that topic, so what is IATA doing for sustainability and how are they working to achieve a net zero?
Yes, well, we obviously represent our member airlines, about 300 member airlines, and the whole airline industry has actually been a precursor in sustainability. You might be surprised to know. You know, it basically started in 2016 with an agreement to offset emissions. The IATA and the airlines then committed to this goal to reach net zero in 2050 in 2021. And our UN Organization for Aviation, ICAO, also made this commitment in 2022. To my knowledge, there's no other industry that has this kind of broad-based support and commitment in this field.
Yeah, they're doing quite extensive work. So how do you think sustainability in aviation should be financed? It's quite a broad question, but I'd appreciate any answer.
Yeah, so you know the problem, I guess, very much centers on the fact that some of these technologies are experimental. You know, although we have sustainable aviation fuel, which we already know works, right? So that needs to be built out with investment, and then future more experimental technologies also need to attract finance and so on for the long-term plan to happen. So, at the origin of any kind of project like that, you need somebody, usually an individual or maybe a private equity firm or such, to put up the love money, as somebody said this morning. I think that's a great expression. Somebody needs to put up the love money, and then the business can grow. Eventually the banks and so on can come in with debt finance. But, fundamentally for all of this to occur, we really need the support of the regulator to remove some of the risk and insecurity in this highly entrepreneurial process.
And it's from then, when you remove that you can really see investment to sustainable aviation.
Yes, because it's always a risk-return calculation for anybody who chooses to invest in anything. And when you're dealing with sort of experimental technologies, the risks are high and the returns are uncertain.
Absolutely. And so why hasn't financing for sustainability in aviation, why hasn't it worked better in the past? I think you mentioned in our conversation before, only 0.1% of aviation so far has been financed for sustainability. So why hasn't it been 100%?
Yeah, so it's 0.1% of all the jet fuel consumption that is available today in terms of sustainable aviation fuel. And we think that this is likely to be the major part of how we can reach net zero is by using lots of this sustainable aviation fuel. And today only 0.1% of our needs can be met. So that's a measure of the lack of funding that has gone into building out sustainable aviation fuel. And in addition to what we said earlier, I think a really fundamental problem is that governments are still subsidizing fossil fuel production. That they have promised that they were going to stop that, but in spite of their promises, 2022 was the highest year ever in terms of money that went to subsidies for fossil fuel. So this is somewhat, mind-boggling, that on the one hand we want to get aviation to net zero, everybody's putting pressure on airlines, and on the other hand the governments are still, making that whole thing more difficult for us by subsidizing fossil fuel production and refusing at this stage pretty much, to subsidize the sustainable aviation fuel production. That's a conundrum, to say the least.
And finally, as like a fun vox pop question, what is something that's keeping you up at night?
Well, I mean, I think that it's unfortunate, of course, that we're trying to engineer this energy transition, of course, in the midst of the climate transition, which means that that's another uphill struggle. We will confront destruction of infrastructure, nature events, lower agricultural productivity, lower productivity in general, migration. All of these things we know are going to make our life more difficult, exactly at the time when we somehow need to really pull together and make this energy transition happen. That's obviously something to give you a nightmare or two. But then on the other hand, you could think that if we manage to engineer this energy transition, we could actually free the global economy of its energy constraint. Energy could be cheap, accessible to everybody, and sustainable. And if we manage to do that, I think we would really have a good chance at addressing the Sustainable Development Goal number 1, which is to eradicate poverty.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
really make
that's a good dream.
Yeah. All right. Amazing. Thank you so much for the interview and your time. I appreciate that.
I thank you.
Thank you.